Welcome to week 7, part 1 of the Song of Solomon study. Before we get into chapter 7 material, I want us to do a little bit of review. So if we rewind to chapter 5, we saw that this couple became a family. They became a covenant vow-taking couple, meaning they're going to forsake all others. And we said the big 3 vows in modern marriages and Christian marriages today is love, honor, and cherish. Okay, so they took these vows, and then this woman had the nightmare, right? That he wasn't going to keep his vows, that he wasn't going to be faithful, that she wouldn't be able, that she wasn't good enough to keep him. And so she went and she searched for him, and her friends helped her, and they came back together, and he hadn't gone anywhere, right? So he was always where he should be. And then he encouraged her, loved her, and built her back up again. So in the end of chapter 6, we talked a lot about if we are feeling lot far away from the Lord, that Jeremiah 29, we went through it last week, is a great place to think. You will find him when you search for him with all of your heart. So I included the little table again because I think was just so helpful to me personally. So when the scripture talks about the heart, it's not just talking about how we feel or our soul, but it's really referencing just like the center of who you are, the reason behind why you have your desires and why you make your decision. At the core of you is the heart. And so we said there were 3 parts, and I just want to take time to remind us of that. So we have the heart is the mind, the heart is your desires, and the heart is your will, what you choose to do. And so we can fall into temptation in different ways. And we talked last week about how poor Eve, she fell into all of them, right? She did. But that when we are falling into sin, if it's sin in our mind, sin in our desires, or sin in our will or our actions, it's actually a root of disbelief, right? So like the woman in the Song of Solomon, that she had insecurities that he wouldn't be faithful, right? That was a failure in belief that was causing us under those fears. So when we sin in our heart mind, what we're falling short to believe is that Jesus is a good prophet or teacher, that he is somehow teaching something that isn't true or isn't good. When I feel these sinful desires rise up in me, what am I really fearing is not true, is that Jesus can't redeem or renew those or give me new passions, godly passions that are better than my old sinful desires, right? That he's withholding something good from me. Okay, and then we have the will. So when I choose to rebel, when my actions are sinful, I am refusing to believe that Jesus is a better king than me, that I need to rule and reign over my own life and get my own way, however I deem suitable for me. That leads to a lot of trouble, right? So that's a good review of the heart. So what Jeremiah 29 taught us, that the Lord can be found when we search him in all of these ways, and to check ourselves and come to him and submit all these areas of our heart to him, that he will be found. All right. So keeping that in mind, let's jump down to chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. We are going to go back up into 6 just briefly, because I think the one builds on the other. But we're going to start with new passages. So chapter 7, 1 through 5. How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O noble daughter. Your rounded thighs are like jewels, the work of a master's hand. Your navel is a rounded bowl that never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a heap of wheat encircled with lilies. Your true breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of gazelle. Your neck is like an ivory tower. Your eyes are pools in Heshbon by the gate of Bath Reuben. Your nose is like a tower of Lebanon, which looks towards Damascus. Your head crowns you like Carmel, and your flowing locks are like purple. A king is held captive in the tresses. So in chapter 6, we saw that she had to go by the Shulamite men, and they were beckoning her to come, and the Lord stopped them, said, no, you shouldn't be doing that. She comes to him, and this is where he picks off, right? We've seen him over and over and over again in these scriptures that the man talks this woman up, right? He's definitely going to do it, right? Today, from her toes to the tippy top of her head, he builds her up. So I wanted us to pay close attention, though, where he starts. So I have a number 1 in my notes. How beautiful are your feet in sandals. So like I mentioned, he starts with her feet. And then he calls her a name. Now, he does not do this in the rest of this passage. So I think this sets these feet apart and was helpful in my understanding of this passage and building this out of like, well, how does this relate to me and Jesus? Okay, so he starts with the feet. The feet are the only part that are clothed or mentioned of clothing. How beautiful are your feet in sandals. And then he calls her, oh, noble daughter. So with this feet, we said that these scriptures are talking a lot about marriage and a lot about sex and marriage and different things, but also that marriage is used as a metaphor to point us to a bigger, more important knowledge, and that is of how God feels towards his church. Okay, so I went ahead and I often will call this chasing a lead. I looked up some passages that I was reminded of about beautiful feet. Okay, so first we have Isaiah 52:7. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns. So what are these feet ready to do? They're ready to spread the gospel. They're ready to do what this woman does. Doesn't this woman talk about her Lord all the time? Anybody that'll listen, she's talking about how good this man is. And that's what the gospel should be to us. Like, I can't wait to tell you. I can't wait to share the gospel. So are we clothing our feet in preparation to be this way? Then also thought of Romans 10:14-16. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. So 2 examples in the New Testament of how the feet of the bride should be, right? We said the church is the bride in this metaphorical song we see in Song of Solomon. And so we're told how to dress our feet, right? To bring the gospel, to bring good news to those who do not know, because how can they not know if they do not hear? So I think this metaphor also is building. Okay, so he's talking about the beautiful feet that are dressed in these sandals, right? They're ready to go. These are not naked feet. They're ready to work. They're ready to spread the good news. But then we have this descriptor, this name. It says, oh, noble daughter. Okay, so I went ahead and put the definition of noble in our notes. So noble daughter is giving her a special distinction between other people. This is who you are. So noble is very good or excellent, possessing superiority of mind, character, ideals, and morals, right? This is a righteous woman, right? Because that good news isn't so good if it's brought to you with wickedness, right? We hear this all the time in some of our friends that struggle with faith, like, but all them hypocrite Christians, right? Who say one thing but live another. What are they saying? They come with good news, but in their lives, they don't live it. They're not noble. They expect other people to be, but they aren't themselves. Okay, so this is the noble daughter, one that does long to live righteously, not perfectly, right? We just saw, right? She has her own beliefs, her own struggles that she needs to go to the Lord with, and that He will renew her. But she is coming as noble. Okay. All right. So also, you notice that he calls her noble daughter. Now we know that this is not some kind of incestuous relationship, but he's trying to build up this idea of who this woman is. So daughters are precious. Daughters are special. Okay. And so this is building out. How does the Lord see us as special, as precious, as more than a lover? Because she is that. He's described her in those ways before, but here he wants to put the emphasis on that kinship, that preciousness of who she is beyond what she provides sexually. You are to me, which is very important for us to know, because the rest of this passage is pretty racy, isn't it? Very, very racy. Okay. But before he goes into any of that, he wants her to know you are a noble daughter, one of position with me because of your preciousness to me, of who you are, not what I take from you. You are not an object. You are not to be used up. You are loved. You are cherished. All right. So he starts at the feet, but then I just made a list. He works his way up. So we're not going to go through. There's a lot of symbolism here. It goes through places, and I was all excited to dive into all these places and what the meaning was behind these all these places. And the Lord, like, we're not going to do that. We're going to go a different direction. But I highly encourage you to do that. I think that is a wonderful study to do. We just don't have time to do it, and felt like the Lord is saying, that's not the main point I want you to teach. So we started with the feet. Then he moves to her thighs, then her belly, then her breasts, then her neck, then eyes and nose, so face, then head and hair. He adores all of her, from her toes to the very tip top of her head. He adores all of it. And what did he call her? Noble. There's nothing about your body that is shameful or wicked. Let me say that again. There is nothing shameful. Your whole body is the living temple of the Lord. Some of us grew up in not such great theology, right? That we were maybe not on purpose, but made to feel that our bodies were shameful, that they were something that incited lust in other people and that we need to cover them because it wasn't good. That's not true. I want us to look first at Psalm 139, 13 through 15. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth, right? The psalmist reinforces this. Fearfully, wonderfully made. Nothing in your frame isn't wonderfully made. Right? In the garden, Adam and Eve were there, and God said, it is good. And they were naked, right? Our bodies are not shameful. But I do want us to look at what is. So going back to 6:12 through 13. All right. Before I was aware, my desire set me among the chariots of my kinsman, a prince. Return, return, O Shulamite, return, return, that we may look upon you. Why should you look upon the Shulamite as upon a dance before two armies? So what were the men wanting to do? And we talked about this last week. They wanted to look at her in a way that they shouldn't. We notice that what's the king's response? You shouldn't do that. But who is he talking to? He is not talking to her. The reprimand is not going to her. He isn't saying, you've tempted these men by the way you're dressed. This woman was probably very covered, right? It doesn't matter, does it? Men will lust at a woman in a parka. It's true, right? Because it's about the heart, and Jesus talks a lot about that in the Sermon on the Mount. Now, does that mean we can wear whatever we want? No, we're going to get there. But know that everyone is responsible for their own lust. So the king scolds the men. No, you're not to look at her like that. Why? Because she's not your bride. She's mine. Okay. All right. So her beauty is not to blame for their lust. Her body is good. And she's the noble daughter, right? She hasn't switched outfits in between this scold and when he praises her. Right? Her attire wasn't to blame for the temptation. Their lust was. All right. So what does the man have the right to do that the prince or the kinsman do not? Because he's doing a lot of this, right? And 7:1 through 5 that we just did. So he told him, kinsman, you shouldn't look on her, but I should, right? And he looked at her feet, and he looked at her thighs, and he looked at her belly and her breasts and her face and her hair and her head. So what's the difference? Why is it a good thing for him to look and a wicked, evil thing for them? Okay. So what kind of obligation or responsibility does the king hold with her? A lot, right? They're covenanted. They have vowed to be faithful. He's the husband. He's the sole provider financially for their family at this time. I guess she was a shepherdess and she could be bringing in some money, but in this world, the king was the one supplying all the need. She was doing all the relying. So he is taking complete responsibility. What kind of responsibility is the prince willing to take on? Bah! Zero, right? So I want zero responsibility, zero commitment. And I just want to take. And that's not what we have with the man and the woman, right? We have a sacrificial love. I give, you give, we work together and we love one another. Is there any love with the prince and the kinsman? Zero love, zero commitment, zero responsibility. He doesn't want to love her, care for her, in better and worse. He doesn't want to cherish and honor her. He wants to take what is not his. He's a thief. So, zero responsibility, zero commitment, zero everything should equal, right? If this is a math equation, should equal the amount of access one gets to you. And this should still be true in marriage as well, right? Okay, so let's think about this, okay? So one spouse totally committed, the other's not faithful. Oh, guess what you just lost? A lot of access. Oh, you're being very, very irresponsible with money to a point that it is harming the family. Guess what's going to go down? Access, trust, availability. So, I listened to a very good podcast, and Lisa Turkest was the guest on that. She has a book called, I think it's Boundaries and Goodbyes, that I'm interested in looking into, but she goes into this, that in healthy, good relationships, as they grow, the amount of commitment grows and the amount of access grows as the commitment, as the responsibility goes. Now, what do we know? There are some accessibilities that cannot happen until there is the covenant in place. So that's why it is so dangerous to give access to yourself in some ways to someone who is not your spouse. We weren't made to work that way. God had a good plan, a good desire. And what we see I see over and over and over again is so much heartache and destruction when we think, oh, well, it's all right to live together before we're married because we love each other. We're really committed to each other. And then 3, 4, 5 months later, a couple years later, they find out, no, they weren't. Why? Because they didn't vow to love, cherish, and honor you. What we see over and over in scripture, that God makes family through covenant. And if you try to give access in a way that only family should, it is sinful. All right. So while the woman doesn't have any responsibility in the men's lust, right? It's not because my body's shameful. We do see that we don't have the right to wear whatever we want either. Why? Because we've been bought with a price, right? Because we're noble daughters who have a mission, who have a purpose. So I wrote down 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body. So, how do we do that? I think it starts in the morning when we get dressed. Oh, Dee, why do you say that? Well, if I'm gospel minded, then every decision I make within a day, I want to submit to the King. right? So in verse 7:1, the most important thing to me in the morning, how beautiful are your feet in sandals, O noble daughter. So when I wake up in the morning, I have lots of different roles that I play. And so depending on what my role is in the moment for that day should determine what I wear. So I wear different clothes on Sunday morning than I do at Monday staff meeting than I do on Tuesday when I'm a PE teacher or on a Friday night when I'm having a date night with my husband. My attire changes based on the audience, but the goal for every audience is the same, to bring them closer to Jesus Christ. So I joked with my friend Luann, who is Pastor Andy's wife, that I don't look very nice at Monday staff meeting. I look pretty good put together on Sunday morning because I'm teaching and I like to wear nice dresses and stuff. But on Monday morning, it is just my brothers, Andy and Devin, and my sister Tara. So I don't usually put on makeup on Monday mornings. Why? Because I don't care what my brothers and sisters think my face looks like. And I'm usually in sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and Tara is too. Okay. So Tuesdays, I teach PE. And I'm usually in, once again, athletic gear because I'm playing sports with the kids. But I'll be honest, like I take a little bit more care of my hair. Why? Because those little girls love pretty hair. And I will tell you, they notice when I have my nails done. And it, like one time I had fake eyelashes on, and all the girls were like, oh my gosh. And I want them to know that it is a good, godly gift to be pretty. So I'm appropriately dressed in my sweatpants and stuff, but I usually try to look a little bit prettier than I do on Monday morning. Okay. All right. So we need to have gospel lenses on when and what we wear. Am I trying to glorify God and bring people closer to God, or am I trying to glorify thee? See the huge heart difference? The outfits can be exactly the same. The makeup, the hair can be exactly the same. And one day it is sinful, and the other it's worship unto the Lord. It's about your heart. Right? So our bodies are not our own. So remember that nowadays we don't only give access to ourselves in our physical bodies when we're walking around. We are in a new day and age where we are giving visual access to others via social media. And I just want to warn some of you. I don't want to get legalistic on this, but something you need to think about is, okay, me in that swimsuit on the beach with my family is not sinful. But when I give access to my friend's husband to that picture in privacy, ooh. Why? Because the context is totally different. He's not in public where if he was gawking at me, shame would be brought upon him, first and foremost by my husband, who would kick his butt. I got an Eastern Kentucky husband. He wouldn't be having none of that, right? What else can you do on social media that you can't do in the real world? Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. And I can spend as much time with that image as I want. So while you aren't responsible for that person's lusts, you are responsible for being a noble daughter and how much access you give to others. Okay. So 1 Peter 3, 3-4 says this: do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry or the clothing you wear, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with imperishable beauty of gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. So, right, where is God saying that the beauty is? It's in that heart. It's in the motivations of what you're about that's beautiful to him. Okay. Also, we need to think with that noble, right? It just has a weight, a clout to it, right? We're thinking of, when we say nobility or royalty, right? A prestige about it. There's a certain level of responsibility, a level of respect, because I am the queen, right? In this metaphor, I'm the queen. So if what I'm choosing respectful, I'll be honest, we get pretty racy in the descriptors here, right? He's going to talk about some coconuts in these next verses. Guess what? I don't want to see your coconuts. And I'm a woman. Okay? So if you come over to hang out at my house and your stuff's hanging out, it's not respectful. It's not responsible, right? Be equipped for the job that you're going to. Okay? We can all show a little less sometimes, okay? And I don't want to be legalistic about it, because it's not like every shirt I have is up to my collar. But when and where and why? The biggest thing is the why am I wearing that? Okay? All right. And then that 1 Peter 3:1-2 hits it when they see your respectful and pure conduct. All right, we're going to stop this recording and then we're going to finish up chapter 7. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.